Welcome, brothers, to another installment of the Virtual Speaker Series from the Psi Foundation. We're here with author Harlan Coben, Gamma 84. I'd like to introduce our questioner is Alex Senchek, Ada06, who is the chair and president of the Psi Upsilon Foundation. He'll be asking some questions and moderating our conversation in just a second. First, I'd like to tell you about the speaker series and the virtual speaker series. We try to strengthen bonds between brothers of all interests and all chapters at all cohorts of life to help promote Psi for life. Sponsorships and gifts to the foundations that support our programs like this and the scholarship program. Thank you all for those who've donated this year. We aim for a moderated conversational tone, which means Alex will be asking your questions. Please type them in the Q&A box. They will not necessarily be asked in order or as they arrive. They'll be sort of worked in as we proceed. As I said, considering yourself to add chapter and year, graduation year to your name if you wish. You by no means have to do that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Alexandra Senchek, Ada06. And
thank you so much, and welcome everybody. I think this is record numbers, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to do this as the weather gets a little bit warmer and sunlight is pouring in later. So thank you everybody for coming. And Harlan, really excited to talk to you, and thank you for doing this. You are, where are you holed up right now? Are you in Montclair?
Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Okay, all right, wonderful. And everything is safe, and you're all well, yes?
Yes, everybody's good, thank you.
Great. Well, you know, if I could start off and maybe ask you to share a little bit about your approach, which I have always found, having read your work for years, you describe it as being empathetic and authentic. And I wonder if you could just elaborate on that and share kind of how you defined your own work.
That's interesting. I don't remember saying that, but I'm sure in one of the millions of interviews or whatever I probably have. Authentic in the sense that if you are faking something, if you are doing any writing that's not really in your heart, the reader will immediately recognize it and tune you out. So if you're one of those people who are trying to write and you want to write for the market, you want to write the kind of novel you don't really like, but you think will sell well, it won't work. There's a saying, shit has its own integrity. So you have to authentic in the sense that, you know, you can't, it's not a place where you try to figure out the market and write it that way. It rarely, if ever, works. Empathetic is probably a little easier. Every writer has to be empathetic. Doesn't necessarily mean sympathetic. And empathetic meaning that I have to get into every character's head, make arguments that I don't necessarily agree with, take political positions I don't necessarily agree with, be people I'm nothing like, you know, younger, older, different genders, different races, whatever. And it's a good exercise. Both, I think it's the value of reading and the value of writing. Maybe something missing a little bit in today's world is seeing the other side and trying to be empathetic without being too corny here for my fellow brothers, and trying to see the other side and trying to be empathetic.
Has there been the most challenging character to really get into the head of? Is there one type or one character that you can remember?
Well, the funny thing is, it's usually the opposite of what I think. I've written, I think, maybe 4 or 5 novels where the lead character and even the first person viewpoint has been female. And I thought that would be really hard. And of course, you're really open to getting destroyed doing that. So you're a little nervous about it. But actually, once I started to write it, I think the first one was Just One Look. It wasn't any harder or more difficult. So it's usually a surprise. I can't think of any at the top of my head. If somebody's hard to get into, I usually start changing the character until they're not.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
And that there's a feature of your writing, at least of the books that I've seen, the surprise twist. It seems to be a hallmark. Can you talk a little bit about, is that something that you know going in at the beginning, or do you just find it at some point in the latter part of the book?
It's both. I mean, writing is like everything else. There's some things you are natural at, some things you have to work at. Not everybody can be a writer the same way not everybody can be a basketball player or whatever else it is. I think probably genetically, or the thing that I bring to the table that's just natural for me, is twisting and turning. I see, for every twist I put in a book, and I put in too many, that's maybe also one of my weaknesses as a writer, I probably see 20 or 30 more. But I do know the end twist before I start. So I know the beginning, I know the end.
Yeah.
I compared traveling from my hometown in New Jersey across the United States to California. I may go Route 80, but chances are I'll go via the Suez Canal or stop in Tokyo, but I pretty much always end up in LA where I plan on going. So I know the ending before I start. I don't know I don't know very many other twists. I don't know where. I may know a couple places I'm stopping along the way, but other than that, I start taking that journey. And as I take that journey, I'm finishing a book right now, and I thought when I started, oh, this one will have a lot less twists. This one will be a little more character driven and straight ahead. And there's like 8 revelations in the last 10 pages. So much for that.
Can I ask what's on your desk when you write? How do you lay it out?
My desk is usually a mess. The thing is, I have a desk and I'm using it now because I can't go out, but my normal writing routine through most of my career is and this is what I recommend actually sometimes, is not to have a routine. I do whatever works until it stops working, and then I try something else. So I will find a place, an area, a time of the day, and it's like a horse. I'm riding that horse. The horse dies. Now I'm looking for a new horse. So my desk at home, I worked for years, especially when my kids were young. It was hard to work in the house. So I worked for years at various Starbucks, at libraries. I did a lot of really good work at this supermarket, had a table that served some coffee next to the deli. I came home smelling like olive loaf. So, I do, the example I give a lot is a lot of people have seen The Stranger recently on Netflix. And when I wrote The Stranger, one day I took my first Uber into New York City from New Jersey, and I felt guilty about spending the money. I'm sitting here trying to justify it, even though, well, the parking in New York, that's $60. And I'm doing all of that, and I start writing on paper and pad in the back of the car, and I write really well. So for 3 weeks, I took Ubers everywhere I went. It just worked in the back. So that's a few examples.
Yeah, I'm also interested, having grown up myself in New Jersey, and that seems to be a location of some of your books and some of your work. New Jersey is an interesting place. Just how have you, and you grew up there in an urban area of New Jersey, and now living in a more suburban area. How has that continued to play a role in your writing?
Well, Jersey is a kind of amazing place. I remember once when I was at one of the New Jersey Hall of Fame ceremonies, Bruce Springsteen was inducting Danny DeVito, and he was comparing him to the state of New Jersey. And he's like, Danny DeVito is little. New Jersey is little. Danny DeVito is dense. New Jersey is dense. Danny DeVito can be nasty. New Jersey can be nasty. We are a interesting hybrid because we're stuck between New York and New Jersey. We're sort of the suburbs of both, not really belonging to either New York City or Philadelphia. Our cities thus reflect that. But what I've learned when I write, and this is for anybody, again, who's trying to write, is the more specific I am, the more universal the appeal. So my books take place for the most part in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. If I say, well, you know what, I'm selling right now pretty well in Bulgaria. Let's make it more Everytown USA to pick up the Bulgarian audience. They'll tune it out. What they love about it, especially a place like New Jersey, is the specifics. If you look at New Jersey, you think of Springsteen, Sopranos, Sinatra, distinctly New Jersey. And so my advice to everybody is, don't try to appeal to everybody. The more, and this is true, I have a friend who's not here, I don't think right now, who's a Psi U guy, who had a clothing line. And he told me the same thing as clothing line. The more specific he was, to what he was doing, the more universal the appeal. The more all of a sudden they would say, you know what, don't have such loud colors, have quieter colors to get more people,
Right.
the business tanked. So it's the same thing. You guys know this in your businesses. The more specific I am as a writer, the more universal the appeal.
And do you have a specific, would you say you have a specific audience that you're writing for?
No, I really don't. I mean, I'm thankful enough to be, I think I'm in 44 languages.
Yeah.
So not many I miss.
Yeah.
Publishers are also a little behind the 8 ball in getting kind of, I think Amazon probably knows my readers better than my publisher does. So I don't really know the age or the sex. I mean, we figure about 60% are female just because about 60% of book buyers are female. But I really don't know, and I would never say, geez, this one's doing really well or this one's doing really poorly. I'll have to change it.
You know, I am fascinated. You were labeled as a multi-hyphenate, meaning somebody who basically works in multiple fields, and certainly the book to movie process. I wonder how do you think you've made that change successfully? How do you think it has influenced your writing style at all, or your thinking on a creative process?
Well, certainly in terms of writing the novels, I can tell you no one really believes this because it sounds good, but it hasn't changed it one iota. The worst mistake a writer can make, besides the ones I've already listed, is to write a book saying this will make a good TV show or this will make a good movie. One of the ways I get around that trap is I'm not afraid to change the book entirely for the TV series, because you should. They once asked James Cain, the great writer of The Postman Rings Twice and Double Indemnity, don't you hate what Hollywood has done to your films? And he said, to your books? He goes, none of my books, right there on the shelf.
Right.
So if the TV show or the movie sucks, it doesn't change what the book is. So that's first thing. Second thing is, they're very, very different. A book is a different storytelling technique than a TV show. And it's very hard for novelists to get that. It's a visual medium. So when I was doing, for example, The Stranger, in the book, The Stranger is a young, pasty white guy like you two. And it just, visually, it didn't work. When we tried to have, we auditioned some men, it just didn't work. So I said, I think it'd be more interesting if we had a really, like a woman with a cool vibe who just came in there and in that first scene drops the bomb on his life and blows him up. And when we saw Hannah John Kamen, she was the stranger. And that suggestion came from me, and a lot of the changes came from me. So I think that helps when I do it. I use the book as a backbone, but I'm not afraid to go off it.
But your instinct, it's interesting, your instinct around what works as a book and also what will work as a movie or in the video medium seems to be, you seem to have that talent that moves between them equally. Would you say that?
When I get it right, it seems to. If I screw something up, I'm lucky I have great, there's a big difference, of course, between book writing and TV writing is one is a collaborative process and one you're doing alone. So The Boy from the Woods just came out. When it hits whatever the New York Times bestseller list, I kind of celebrate alone. So, I have my editor and that stuff, but it's really kind of like being a golfer or a tennis player. When The Stranger on Netflix did really well, it was like being captain of a World Cup soccer team. I want all my teammates to do well. I don't really care who scores. I just want us to win the game.
Right.
And it was really fun after a lot of years alone in a room. To be able to collaborate and celebrate with a lot of talented people. And they helped me from making major mistakes because I have the same partners. I've done 3 shows that are on Netflix right now, The Five, Stranger, and Safe. And I've had the same core of 4 people who I've worked with on all 3.
And were there any surprises? I mean, making that transition, and obviously, I imagine you were nervous, but also excited, as anybody is, to see their work shown differently. Yeah. Any surprises that you came to realize? I
don't know if it's a surprise. I mean, one thing that's interesting is, right, we try to act like something's not a big deal, and I kind of hate that. So, I sold a lot of books. I'm not a young guy, but when I'm on the set, every time I'm on the set, I still look around and I say to myself, I had this little idea sitting in my house in New Jersey, and now I'm in England or France or wherever I am, and 200 super talented people
Right.
who, many of whom I've seen on the screen zillions of times are
Right.
bringing it to life. And if that doesn't jazz you up, you're in the wrong business. So it's been a really cool experience so far, the TV stuff.
Yeah. And has your approach to writing and also just your creative process evolved over time? I would suspect it has, but how has it evolved over time, especially now with what you're doing in this new medium?
It's hard for me to know. I don't have the same energy I had when I was younger, where I used to write more at night. Now I write more during the day, more forgetful. You learn things, so that makes it easier. But you also have used up a lot of things in your life, which makes it harder. I compared, if you can imagine in front of you, a large field with very tall grass. So the first time you're writing a book, you're going in there and you're going macheting all over the place, but you don't know where you're going. You don't know if you'll ever reach the other side and get out. You're just going. Right. Eventually you reach the other side and you get out. Now I come back to the front and I got to do it again. So I've learned a few things, but I can't use the same path in my life that I used before.
Right.
The one thing I try to do is to replant, if you will, by going to museums or listening to people or having talks like this and learning some new stuff. So I have some new material that I can plant there. But that was really stretching that analogy, but let's just go with it.
But it is interesting, Myron Bolitar was a series that obviously spanned quite a number of years, and so that had some commonality. Did that provide any? Was the creative process faster because of that, or was it more difficult?
Well, first of all, a couple things. Myron's not done. I do plan on bringing them back in a really shocking way, and I can't say more than that right now. But two things that will relate to some of the people in the audience know this, and just for Psi U, both Myron and Win are Psi U. Myron is based off me with a lot of wish fulfillment. I played college basketball, but as the people in here can tell you, I was not Myron Bolitar. He's faster, he's stronger than me, he's funnier. I haven't beaten two areas. I'm a better dancer, which I'll demonstrate later. And I'm slightly wiser in the ways of women. That's no great shakes. It's like saying, gonorrhea is better than syphilis. We're not two geniuses here, but I've done better with women and with the same woman many years, and his love life is a disaster. And Win is based off a Psi U guy who was also my college roommate for many years at Amherst. And so first of all, that's the connection between in terms of that. But when I write Myron, to compare it to painting, when I do a standalone novel, which I've done mostly, I think I've 30-something novels, 11 of which are Myron, 3 of which are Mickey, his niece, nephew, and the rest are standalones. Standalone's a blank canvas. A Myron novel is like this huge, gigantic painting that already has stuff filled in, but I love what's filled in. So it makes it a little more constricting, but I also love what's already there. And I also look at each novel. I've written 11 Myron Bolitar novels as one chapter in a larger novel that I don't know the ending to yet. So Myron started when he was 28. He's in his early 40s now by home. I don't know where he's going to go from here.
And do you think that there is there a different mindset when did you start out creating Myron as a series, or was it a standalone and then you just realized that this had longer, a longer play here?
I created him as a series. This is back when I first was writing Myron, it was 1993. So it was a long time ago. And at that time, I was trying to break in, and a series were the big thing. In fact, at the time, female lead character series were the big thing. Sue Grafton, Sarah Paretsky, people like that. So the suggestion from my agent at the time was to write a female sports agent series. And I went home, and I kind of wanted to try that. And then it's weird. It sounds like stupidly magical, and I hate when authors do that. But Myron was just there. I just started writing, and Myron was just there. So I wrote the entire first book, Deal Breaker, and I wrote a chapter or two of the second book, Drop Shot. And so we sold it as a 2-book deal. And before I sound like I'm bragging about that, I should point out it was paperback original, and I got $5,000 a book was my advance on the first 2 Myron Bolitar books. So those people think it happens overnight. to me, again, not to brag, but by the fourth Myron Bolitar novel, I was making $6,000 a month.
Wow.
So it doesn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. Nowadays, I get emails from people saying, I've written 2 self-published novels. Why aren't I selling like you and Patterson? My first New York Times bestseller was my 10th novel, Tell No One. Yeah. Longer answer than you wanted. Go ahead.
Well, but staying on Myron, one of the things, just looking at your work and having read it, the names that you come up with for your characters, I think, are some of the most just they're just so unique and they're so wonderful. And to come up with I have a daughter on the way, and we're going through this process right now. How do you think about names and building up these characters that are so unique and just wild?
First, my young friend, besides congratulations, don't tell anybody your name, because people have weird prejudices with name. It's like Stephen. Oh, I knew Stephen. I hated him. You know, it's very weird. But once they hear the name, everyone will love it.
Yeah, so, tell my mother that.
Don't tell anybody the name. Just trust me on this. Okay. I do it a lot of different ways, but most of it's just by sound, and I try something out. And I've written books where a guy's not the guy. So we're doing a series right now, we were doing a series in Spain. We were filming it, and the lead character in that book was Will Klein. When I wrote the book, I started with the name. I think he was maybe Jeff Klein. I don't remember. Matt, I don't remember. But at the end, someone in the middle, I'm like, he's not a Jeff. You know, you look at he wasn't a Jeff. He was a Will or a Matt or whatever he is. And sometimes it's as stupid as that. Sometimes the words just sound good together. And as a lot of times I also do it for charities. So it may sound like I know what I'm talking about, but if you donate a certain amount of money to charity, I name characters for you. I raise about $50,000 to $100,000 a book doing that. And then sometimes it's just shout outs to friend of mine. I know Martin Brayboy's on here. Martin's been a character.
He is a character.
Yeah, he's a character in real life too. But a lot of guys, or I'll combine their names instead of, I'll take like, if Jim Chester and Martin Brayboy are in the room, I may name the character Jim Brayboy or whatever. So a lot of people will notice that I give shout outs just to whatever random person's
interesting
up in my head. So a lot of people on this list who are from my fraternity are probably putting their name in books.
So I'd like to pivot, if you don't mind, a little bit towards how you view where the industry is going, the media, entertainment, broadly speaking, and the creative world today, maybe taking COVID aside slightly, just because of we could talk forever about that. But, you know, how do you think about, we thought books might be dead, some years ago when Amazon was amassing. Now it seems like more people are reading. What's your take on where things are going?
Well, interesting thing is I'm not that smart, and I kind of recognize that. I've also recognized that no one predicts anything correctly. No one predicted 20 years ago we'd all be holding these all the time. No one predicted some guy in, was it Tunisia or Algeria, set himself on fire starting the Arab Spring. No one predicted Trump. No one predicted COVID. No one predicts it right. So knowing that, I don't try. I'm also not that smart. So what I know I can do is to write and write well and tell stories well. So I just focus, I'm also very big on controlling what I can control. So if I write a good enough story, you're gonna read it if it ends up being on stone tablets, on ebook, on hardcover, and audio. So my job, I'm the content guy, right? So however it gets delivered, I'm not smart enough to know or care. When Amazon's gonna destroy the world, Barnes and Noble's gonna destroy the world. And I keep hearing that, and I'm like a child, la, 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 I can't hear you. So my only recommendation would be to just focus on whatever it is you're doing. I've seen so many predictions for where the streaming is going and all that. And again, no one thought that this guy who had a DVD company would create a show, with Kevin Spacey and all of a sudden blow up. So I'm just going to continue, and whatever you do, if you're the guy who does lighting, if you're the guy who does sound, if you're the guy, with so many people in this industry, just do that great, and people are going to want to work with you. So the answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I started doing TV now, like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, if I wanted to do a TV series and I was talking to people, well, It's got to be exactly 43 minutes long. We have commercial breaks at this moment. Each episode has to solve the crime, because next week you have to act. It's a Starsky and Hutch thing. I mean, you watch an episode of Starsky and Hutch, at the end, you know, or Starsky would have his fiance and she would die, and at the end he'd be walking off crying. Next episode, they wake up in a hot tub with new women. You know, you can't do that. And I had no interest in doing that. So what I do right now with these 8 or 10 or 6 episode Netflix series couldn't have been done a few years ago.
Right. And do you think that's going to be, do you see that just happening more and more? I mean,
the only thing I would say is people want choice. And so I think the days of, though I love it and I kind of miss it, the excitement of each week waiting for the show seems to be gone. But the same way that, as you mentioned before, for a while, ebooks were destroying print, destroying it. So my sales are, let's say you're all hardcover, ebook comes into business and shoots up like that, where ebook is more than hardcover. And now it's kind of like this. We're hardcover, pretty close, but ebook's not growing. Ebook has suffered more than physical book, even with the stores closing on my last book. So you just don't know.
And if you were to say is there an epicenter of creativity that you see that excites you about the world today? Is it LA? Is it New York? Do you see, you know, where do you see it coming from? Obviously people are approaching you, so you have a particular vantage point for this.
My vantage, actually, it's the world, is the spots we don't know, which is why I love working overseas so much. It's not New York, and in my view, it's not New York or LA. I've really, you know, I just finished my next TV show on Netflix. June 12th. We just dropped the trailer. I love the phrases. We dropped the trailer on my Twitter this week, and it's The Woods, based off my novel The Woods, and we filmed it in Poland with all Polish crew, and so talented. It's a beautiful series, very, very different from the other ones that I've done. Just gorgeous, atmospheric, character-driven. You'll cry at the end. It's really well done. That's the kind of thing that's where I think it's going to be exciting. I was on the jury for a Cannes TV festival a couple of years ago, where it was international TV. And the shows were brilliant. People also have to learn to either dealing with dub or better subtitles, because you'll find you're missing out on so many great movies and TV shows. That's where I think the exciting stuff's going to be. There's some great Israeli TV shows. There's some cool Italian TV shows. There's, you know, the Nordic TV shows like The Killing that people already know. A lot of people watch The Money Heist, the Spanish show. So that's where I think the exciting stuff will happen.
And certainly just the technology around it is also really interesting, right? I mean, the ability for things to be generated in multitude of different platforms, or bringing it on your device, right? And shooting it off of your cell phone instead of the kind of production process that used to take place. It's really interesting I imagine you see that as well.
It's opened up. It really has opened it up for everybody much more. The same way that, you know, people can publish now, no matter, you know, in my day, you had to get published by one of the legacy publishers or whatever you want to call them. Nowadays, anybody could go on Amazon or one of those services and get it. That's a good thing or a bad thing, that I don't know. The gatekeepers have a purpose, but you can, and the cost is a lot less. So some of the TV series that I've made overseas, if I were to make them here, they would have been much more expensive to make.
Right. And do you think that there's the kind of writing that you've done, the genre that you have really taken on, has oftentimes been Sherlock Holmes, others, right? There are just so many versions of this. The sleuth that is, or the hero with their own challenges, to say the least. Some of them are imperfect heroes. That seems to be something that has stood the test of time. Do you see that as, how do you investigate that further? Are you seeing more of that? What is that interesting to you in different ways now than before?
It depends. I mean, you can get away with more now. I've always look, your hero has to be likable and real to you. Doesn't be nice, doesn't be kind, has to be somebody you'd want to sit in a pub with and have a beer. and he could be, I mean, Wynne in the Myron Bolitar series is nearly psychotic. If, you know, he's certainly a sociopath, right. And I love that about him. And he's people's favorite character. So the key is to still make them authentic, and because people will cheer on real people. They won't cheer on really good people. Mm-hmm. It's a tough balance. Though you can't get away with, you know, anti-hero is a big thing. And so whenever something becomes a big thing, you'll see a backlash on it. The, you know, the bad guy hero, the Sopranos, that's sort of a thing. What happens is everybody rushes in, and then it becomes a cliche and doesn't work anymore. And I don't know what's going to be next. So yeah. I'm just going to continue to write and try figuring it out each book as I go along.
Well, I wish you luck there, because certainly it's been fun to follow you through the other inflection points and some of the game changers in your career. But maybe in the final 10 or so minutes that we have left, I'd love to just talk a little bit about some of those career resources and just your thoughts on writing. So you mentioned having used a couple of Psi-Us. I'm just wondering if in some of your books, have you worked with any in a professional manner?
Well, my friend Danny Zucker, who I went to Livingston High School with, he and I went to the same high school. I've known Danny since high school. Believe it or not, Danny, for those who don't know who Danny Zucker is, Syracuse Psi-U. I don't know what name of that chapter is. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so Danny writes Modern Families, executive producer on Modern Families, done a lot of other shows. When I was a senior in high school, our high school is 3 years, he was a sophomore, and I was president of the student council, believe it or not. And Danny was running for class treasurer, vice president, against literally like the most popular kid in the school, and no one knew who Danny was. And Danny comes up to give a speech and gives really 3 minutes of the best stand-up comedy. At that, I still can quote it. When I saw him for the first time in years, I quoted it to him, and he ended up winning. So if you ever have Danny on, ask him to repeat the speech he made to win sophomore high school vice president or whatever it is.
We'll make a note of it. He's going to be a speaker in a couple of weeks.
Good. He's a funny guy. People tune in for him. But Danny and I have been actually noodling around recently with an idea of possibly working together. We've always wanted to work together. I think it'd be fun to marry the talents. You know, my storytelling with his humor, I think would be a lot of fun. So, you know, I don't really ask people too much at the site. Then all of a sudden I find out they were Psi-U. So off the top of my head, that's the only one I'm thinking of. But certainly I've worked with a lot of the guys who you know, and I'm friends with a lot of the guys who are on this call right now.
And Dan Brown is
of course,
Psi-U from your
chapter. I joke that, you know, I think in the last list they had, I was in the top 30 best-selling authors in the world, but I'm not even #1 at my fraternity while I was there.
you have goals to aspire to.
Crushed me like a little bug. So.
Goals to aspire to. So we have a couple of aspiring writers and some folks who have published. I'm wondering, do you have any wisdom for them, and especially about getting published and getting recognized? The noise seems to be one of the hardest things, rejection and noise.
Well, it's always been hard I mean, it's hard, maybe harder now. I don't know. It's certainly, I'd say, easier to get published, maybe harder to get noticed. One thing is, I say I don't know how to get published anymore. You know, when I did it back for the first time, my first book came out in 1990. Right. I know for you kids, that's like I'm talking about World War I or something like that. Like, you know, the bullhorn or something that's happened that. So it's a long time ago. So I don't really have any information on how to go about getting published. I do think we overmarket writers nowadays. I think that they've been sold this bill of goods because you want to feel like you can do something, right? So, I have to be on Twitter and I got to be on Instagram. And Dan Brown's an example. He's really, I don't think he has any or very little social media presence. You know, Gillian Flynn is one of the last huge breakout books. Gillian Flynn wrote Gone Girl. So I tell people, you know, who are convinced that the answer to getting big sales is to I said, go to her Twitter, look at her Facebook, and see how she's done. She doesn't even have them. I've known Gillian hates all of that stuff. Yeah. So I'd say my best advice is after you write a book, and if you're lucky enough to get it published, write the next one. Your book you published probably isn't as good as you think it is, and there's really not much you can do. I've never seen a case, I'm sure there are, that I don't know of in my world, where a person has been able to really make the next leap up via a really clever post or Twitter. You have to have something that's going to just get, you know, drives people to read it. And still, and what's interesting about my business, this is still great, the best way of getting a book sold is word of mouth. I mean, how do you buy your book? You don't see an ad for it. You don't see an ad on Twitter or somebody clever. Somebody tells you, wow, this book was really good.
Right, right.
Still the way.
Yeah, and it does seem as though, the writing more yields more, right? Do you work on more than one book at a time, or do
Never.
you?
I'm like I'm like a boxer.
Yeah.
And I fight one opponent at the time. At the end is the 15th round. I can't even lift my arms. That's it, Howard. Right. I've thrown every punch I have in the bag. I need to take a rest. And so that's where it is.
But you've published a book almost every year since you've started writing. Is that correct? So yeah. I can't imagine you've taken that much downtime before picking up to the next one.
No, it's like the other way when I compare it to is mountain climbing. So you climb that mountain, you're exhausted, you can't even move, you collapse, and then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, in the distance, you see another peak. So you start tentatively heading toward it.
Right, right. So, are there resources that you think that you think aspiring writers should use? Do you is there anything that you hand somebody if they say I want to be a writer? That's the oracle.
Two books. One people know very well, Stephen King's On Writing. Steve is great, obviously a great writer, great mind. We'll never have another Stephen King, but that book on writing is great. My favorite book on writing, however, is by a woman named Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird. Wonderful essay book, very funny. If you have any interest in the artistic process, doesn't have to be writing, or the insecurity that goes on behind what I do. I really recommend it. We writers, by the way, I sound here like I'm confident. Writers we're tremendously insecure. We always think we suck. Only bad writers think they're good. If you have Danny on, I'm sure he'll tell you the same thing. He thinks he's terrible every day. Every joke he thinks is going to bomb. And if you don't have that, you're probably not going to make it as a writer. So even Stephen King, he wrote a book a couple books ago where he used my name, and he emailed me about it. First, I asked him permission, like I'm going to say no, but he actually sent me the book, and I could tell he's sort of nervous about my reaction. I'm like, you're Stephen fucking King. But it never goes away. That's why he's still so great.
Yeah. Again, the amount that he has come up with, definitely is
genius.
Well, I first of all, I want to say an incredible amount of gratitude to you for doing this and taking the time to speak with me and be with all of us. I have one last question that I am stealing from another podcast, but I think it's one of the best questions to sort of to end with.
Sorry, I just see it pop up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is there something you thought you knew that you have come to learn otherwise in your career?
I think almost everything. I'll almost do it the other way. It's like when people sort of ask what you would do differently if you can go back. And for me, the answer is nothing. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but those mistakes along the road led me to being right here. And maybe if I got something right earlier, I wouldn't be right here.
Yeah.
So, I try to enjoy the journey. My career was slow growing. One of the things was naivete. In a way, naivete worked for me. So when I first started, and I was that paperback original guy getting $5,000 a book, they didn't have Amazon rankings back then.
Right.
So I had no idea what a pimple on the ass of publishing I was. I thought I was, the cat's pajamas. I thought I was doing great. If someone told me the odds of being where I am now back then, I probably would have killed myself.
Yeah.
So naivete goes a long way to whatever you're trying to do. Look for the goal that's just a few feet in front of you. I just wanted one book published. That was my goal. Then it was, well, wouldn't it be great 2 books? The show wasn't a fluke. Well, wouldn't it be great to scratch out a living? Wouldn't it be great to one day hit a bestseller list? Wouldn't it be great to one day be #1? All those things. Yeah. Incremental.
Yeah. Well, Harlan Coben, I can't thank you enough. I think we are all incredibly appreciative of your time, and if this experience has taught me anything, it is that there's so much more to come and that I look forward to from you and the other brothers that are on this call. So thank you. if you have any last remarks, I'll open it to you, but also maybe ask Jonathan to just close us out then.
Harlan, would you like to say anything?
No, I got nothing. Thank you, everybody. It's great to see. I'm starting to look now at who's here. It's great to see so many of my old friends who, including my roommate John Ong. When I was in Psi U, John was a senior, I was a sophomore, and John was allowed to pick who lived in the single next to him, and I threatened to beat him up if he didn't pick me. And I'm like, I'm a lot bigger. And actually, one of my first writing gigs, I wrote a song with John on many years ago. And I see Rachel Albert. I see a lot of my friends. Tom Ford, your father Henry used to come visit us. It was always a wonderful thing at Psi U. And when we would see him, he was sort of the spirit, if you will. He took it such to heart, and it was so just a nice memory of your dad. I saw George Spencer. I saw Martin Brayboy. I saw Joni Brewster. I won't yell at everybody. Hampton McFadden. Hampton, how are you, buddy? So I just see a lot of my old friends. I just want to say thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
This has been our speaker series, our second one for May. We've got one more coming up in 2 weeks. Our next speaker will be publisher Jason Pinter, who is a Xi 03. He owns Polis Books Publishing House. If you are looking for other ways to be involved with Psi U or the foundation, you can register for upcoming speaker series. You can check out the updates to sciu.org, including the published list of our scholarship winners for this year. Donations to the foundation help support our scholarships and our programs, operations, and outreach efforts like the speaker series. We do have a Psi Upsilon professional network on LinkedIn, and a dedicated staff at the international office to help you. So again, thank you so much, Harlan. It's a pleasure. I look forward to checking out more of your work. And everyone, thank you very much for participating in the speaker series, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.